Some of the most important stories are also the quietest and the most underreported. My next guest says a widespread social crisis is simmering under the surface and in desperate need of attention. NYU professor and best-selling author Scott Galloway has dedicated much of his career to exploring why men in America are struggling. In his new book, Notes on Being a Man, Galloway offers a path forward for men and the parents of young men and boys, all dealing with feelings of isolation, suffering from economic inequality, and struggling with the evolving message of the Democratic Party. Galloway argues they need an aspirational vision of masculinity. I sat down with them a short time ago to discuss what it means and also to discuss President Trump's recent remarks on the economy and his remarks tonight to the forum. Here's part of our wide-ranging discussion. Scott, I want to get to your extraordinary new book in a moment, but first I want to draw on your experience as a professor of business at NYU and talk about the economy. Americans really turned on President Biden because he tried to tell them everything was okay and they knew it wasn't. And now, not even a year into his presidency, Trump is facing the same dilemma. You cannot tell Americans things are cheaper and there's no inflation because the one thing they know for sure is how much everything costs. Inflation is down, so why are things so tough right now?
Yeah, so inflation, it's down, but it's still kind of sticky. And if you look at the producer's price index, it's come down, but the CPI is, or the confidence index, people are actually less confident that they've been in a while. And I think a lot of it is that, the bottom line is, Elizabeth, I think it all comes back to the same boring place, and that is for the first time in history, a 30-year-old isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. So there's a lot of shame and rage amongst young people, and housing continues to get more expensive, education continues to get more expensive, and their purchasing power has kind of barely kept up with inflation. And when young people aren't doing well, there's a ripple-on effect because their parents are angry. And that is, if your kids can't afford to have a home, if your son isn't economically viable and is having trouble finding a romantic partnership, and every day you feel as if you're not keeping up, and 210 times a day you're reminded on your phone that if you're not in Saint-Tropez or in St. or have a Gulf Stream that you're somehow failing. I just think the emotional anxiety is playing a big role, because if you look at things, and again, it doesn't help to say this, things may not be ideal, but they have been a lot worse before. And I say that as not a fan of the president's, but the economy, in my view, has been remarkably resilient in the face of some headwinds.
Trump just proposed, like literally in the last hour, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. Will those things make a difference, enough of a difference for enough people?
I think it's mostly populist. The no tax on tips thing, it actually impacts very few people. And what I don't get is he's proposing to pay for it with money they're collecting from the tariffs. So let me tax consumers and then give it back to certain. It just seems like a very inefficient way. One of the things I admire about Republican ideology is that if you just let people keep as much money as possible, they'll figure out the most productive ways to use that capital. And this, to me, seems very like we're going to increase taxes in the form of tariffs and then redistribute it. I don't know. This feels a little populist. I think that no tax on tips and overtime, if it puts more money in the pockets of the middle class, great. But I'm just somewhat skeptical. The no tax on tips thing, when you really looked at who it impacts, most of these people don't itemize their tax deduction to begin with.
Right.
And there was a limit on it. So it felt more populist than actually impactful.
It's also a small percentage of the population, but you brought up tariffs. Trump is now reversing himself on many of his tariffs, lifting them on many products. He seems to be acknowledging that other countries did not, in fact, pay these tariffs. American consumers did.
I taught micro and macroeconomics in graduate school, and we used to talk about tariffs in the light of, can you believe how stupid these people were to believe this would actually work? We thought this was a thing of the past, this level of tariffs. And if you were looking for the most elegant way to reduce prosperity, it'd be pretty difficult to find something better than tariffs. And in addition, it's not even the tariffs themselves that I think are really going to hurt America over the long term. It's a lack of dependability and reliability on the U.S. as a trading partner, because the tariffs seem to be a function of his blood sugar level that day. And so the objective of the tariffs was to inspire a lot of deal making with the U.S., and bring back manufacturing, it's had the entirely the opposite impact. And that is, there's a lot of deal making right now. Unfortunately, it's deal making to get around the U.S. It's the Prime Minister of Canada going to Asia. Japan, South Korea, and China are speaking for the first time in a long time. Everyone's trying to reroute their supply chain and diversify away from what is seen as an undependable American administration. And when you look at a place like Canada, the largest undefended border in the world, tremendous friends of ours, 70% of their exports into the U.S., quite frankly, they screwed up. They trusted us. We are really taking a hammer to their economy. And then on the reverse side, we asymmetrically benefit from trade with Canada because we sell high margin products in that trade at a higher multiple in our market. So for every dollar of trade exports into Canada, we're probably getting $3 in shareholder value, whereas they're just getting 1 for 1. So we benefit asymmetrically from these trading relationships. And yet we've decided the definition of stupid, according to Professor Carlo Cipolla from Berkeley, is something that hurts other people while hurting yourself. By that measure, these tariffs could not be more stupid.
What about the 50-year mortgage that President Trump has proposed? There's a housing crisis in this country, but isn't the problem there's not enough housing? What will a 50-year mortgage do to solve that?
Look, the idea is it does reduce the monthly payment a little bit. But basically, one of the wonderful things about housing is that in terms of other asset classes, it hasn't outperformed other asset classes, but it's a forced savings mechanism. People, when you ask them to contribute money to their 401k every month, may or may not, but people don't want to be kicked out of their house. So it's traditionally been a great way to build wealth because it's sort of a forced savings mechanism. You build equity. You know, I would argue that a 15-year mortgage is probably even better than a 30-year because for a little bit more money in 15 years, you own your home outright. The idea of making that payment for 50 years and paying kind of double the interest, to me, that feels, some people would argue it's innovation. I would argue that you're indenturing yourself. So people have to make their own decisions, but I would never recommend anyone take out a 50-year mortgage.
Yeah, double the interest is the key part of that because a lot of people, wait a second, double the interest. That is a significant sum of money. All right, let's talk about the crisis confronting young men in this country. You write about this in your new book, Notes on Being a Man. You say that young American men are more likely to suffer addiction, more likely to slip into depression, land in jail, remain single, remain isolated, even kill themselves than any previous generation of men. What is happening?
Yeah, it would be hard to identify a cohort that has fallen further faster than young men over the last 20 years. If you walk into a morgue and there's 5 people who died by suicide, Elizabeth, 4 are men. So 4 times more likely to kill themselves. We have a homeless and an opiate crisis, but what we really have is a male homeless and a male opiate crisis. They're 3 times more likely to be addicted, 12 times more likely to be incarcerated. Only 1 in 3 men under the age of 30 is in a relationship, whereas 2 in 3 women are in a relationship. And you think, well, that's mathematically impossible. It's not, because women are dating older because they want more economically and emotionally viable men. You have now 1 in 7 men are qualify as NEETs. They're neither in education, employment, or training. They're essentially doing nothing. 1 out of 3 men under the age of 25 still lives at home. 1 out of 5 men at 30 is still living at home. So we have essentially a group of people who are becoming just very unproductive citizens. And the result is the deaths of despair, drunk driving accidents, suicide, opiate addiction, overdoses. Since 2002, for the last 23 years, more men have died incrementally, not men who were dying from deaths of despair, but additional deaths from despair is greater than the number of young men who were lost in World War II. So this is taking a real toll on households and on young men. And we were off mic talking about the struggles of young men. When a boy loses a male role model, at that moment, he's more likely to be incarcerated than graduate from college. And the interesting thing about that data, Elizabeth, is that a girl in a single parent home has similar outcomes, same rates of college attendance, same rates of self-harm. What it ends up is that while boys are physically stronger, they're emotionally and neurologically much weaker than girls. And what we're seeing is the kind of economic sucking sound of economic prosperity being transferred from young to old, which has happened over the last 40 years, is having a disproportionately negative effect on young men.
So you're saying that young women are better equipped somehow to deal with all the headwinds that are derailing young men?
That's what the data shows. When a woman doesn't have a romantic relationship, oftentimes she pours that energy back into her friend network and her professional life. If a man hasn't cohabitated or been married by the time he's 30, there's a 1 in 3 chance he's going to be a substance abuser. There's this cartoon, Elizabeth, of a woman in her 30s who didn't find romantic love, sitting in the windowsill with cats, staring out depressed. Like, what a tragedy that Lisa didn't find love. Guess what, Elizabeth? Lisa's just fine. I mean, the data's clear. Widows are happier after their husband dies. Widowers are less happy after their wife dies. Women in relationships do live longer, 2 to 4 years. Men in relationships live 4 to 7 years longer. So just the outcomes, the rates of self-harm, it ends up, the bottom line is men need relationships more than women. And essentially women are more resilient. They don't know if it's because women have had to endure menstruation or childbirth, but it ends up, I'll give you a really frightening statistic, 2 15-year-olds, a boy and a girl, both sexually molested. Neither crime is less heinous than the other. The boy is 10 times more likely to kill himself later in life. So what we're coming to grips with the fact is that men and boys are neurologically weaker and need relationships more. Now, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean they're entitled to relationships. No group is expected or responsible for servicing another group of men, but the reality is men need relationships more than women.
Our thanks to Scott Galloway on the importance and the crisis of relationships and the crisis confronting young men. The second part of my conversation with Scott Galloway will air right here tomorrow night on Elizabeth Vargas.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.